Today, we're digging into something that shapes all of your relationships. We're talking about the hidden blueprint that dictates how you connect with others.
Have you ever wondered why you react the way you do in a relationship? That powerful pull towards someone, or maybe that sudden urge to push them away? Well, it turns out a lot of that is driven by an unconscious pattern, a story that was written long, long before you could even remember it. To really get it, we've got to go way back to the beginning.
All right, so to really understand our relationships as adults, we have to start at the very, very beginning, with that blueprint that gets formed when we're just kids. This all starts with something called attachment theory. And the core idea from psychologist John Bowlby is actually pretty simple, but it's really profound. Basically, as mammals, when we feel threatened or distressed, our first instinct is to get close to a caregiver. I mean, it's a survival thing, it's hardwired right into us. Now, what's really fascinating is how this plays out. Think of it like this. There are these two competing systems inside every little kid. When there's a threat, they're hungry, they're scared, bam, the attachment system fires up. They need comfort. But when they feel safe and secure, the exploratory system takes over. And that's when they're free to just be kids, to play, to learn, to check out the world. It's this constant dance between the two.
So what this means is that the way our parents or caregivers responded to us, that wasn't just some random moment that disappeared. No way. Every time they responded, it was a lesson. And all those lessons, they just stack up and up, creating this really deep internal blueprint that ends up guiding our relationships for, well, the rest of our lives.
Okay, so you might be thinking, if this whole blueprint was formed before we could even talk, how on earth can we access it now? Well, it turns out researchers found a key. And that's a huge question, right? We're trying to get at feelings and expectations that were basically burned in before we had language. We can't just remember them like we remember what we had for breakfast. So how did researchers figure out a way to unlock that door? And this is it. It's called the Adult Attachment Interview, or AAI for short. Now, this isn't some test with right or wrong answers. Not at all. It's more like a structured, guided conversation. And the whole point is to see not just what you remember from your childhood, but how you've put all those memories together into a story. So here's a taste of what it's like. One of the first questions they'll ask is something like this. It sounds so simple, right? But then the interviewer starts digging. They ask for specific memories that show what you mean by each word. And it's right there, in that journey from a general idea to a specific detailed story, that's where your hidden blueprint starts to peek through. Okay, and this right here, this leads to the most mind-blowing discovery to come out of all this research. It totally flipped how we think about our past. It turns out that the actual objective facts of your childhood, whether it was good or bad, that's not the most important thing. What really matters is how you tell the story about it now. The key is the coherence of your narrative. Does it make sense? Can you talk about the good and the bad and have it all hang together in a believable way? That ability to weave it all together, that's what's shaping your relationships today. It's huge. So what do these different stories actually sound like? Well, after analyzing thousands and thousands of these interviews, researchers found that they tend to fall into 4 distinct patterns. Okay, so here they are. First, you have the secure style. This usually comes from having caregivers who were pretty consistently there for you. Then there's the dismissive style. This often comes from caregivers who were consistently rejecting, which basically teaches a kid, hey, don't show your needs. Then we have the preoccupied style, which tends to grow from inconsistent care. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. That creates a lot of anxiety. And finally, you have the disorganized style, which is the most complex. It often comes from a caregiver who is a source of fear themselves. All right, let's zoom in on the dismissive style for a second, because this one can be super misleading. On the outside, these folks often look like the ideal, right? They seem strong, super independent, resilient. They really look like they have it all together. But what's really going on internally? That strength is a defense mechanism. It's a strategy they learned way back in childhood. Okay, if asking for comfort gets me rejected, then I'm just going to stop showing that I need comfort at all. So fast forward to the interview. When you ask them for a specific memory of being upset as a kid, they often just draw a blank. And it's not because they're lying. It's because they have become absolute pros at pushing those feelings and those details completely out of their awareness. Okay, so having a coherent story sounds nice and all, but does it really have a tangible impact on your life today? Well, the research shows the impact isn't just tangible, it's incredibly predictive.
And this is where things get really wild. The researchers wanted to know, could this internal story you tell yourself actually predict real-world outcomes? Specifically, could it predict how you'll end up parenting the next generation? And the answer was a resounding yes. Researchers found that they could take a parent's adult attachment interview before their child was even born, and just from analyzing that parent's story, they could predict that child's future attachment style with about 75% accuracy. Just think about that. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. The story you've built inside your own head about your past, it directly shapes the emotional world of your child. Your internal narrative literally becomes their lived reality. And this really brings us back to the single most important takeaway from all of this. It is not about having a perfect childhood. That's not what's predictive. In fact, tons of people with really tough pasts end up developing a secure attachment style. So what predicts security in their own kids? It's not the absence of bad stuff. It's the presence of a story, a narrative that makes sense of it all. So, what does one of these coherent narratives actually look like? Well, a few things. It means you can think about your past and feel the emotions tied to it at the same time. It means when you make a general statement like, "My mom was loving," you can back it up with specific examples. Your story is believable, it just makes sense. And, crucially, you can acknowledge the painful parts without getting totally overwhelmed by them or just brushing them off. And you know what? This is the most hopeful part of all this research. Your attachment style, it's not a life sentence. It's a blueprint, sure, but blueprints can be redrawn. By doing the work of understanding your past and weaving it into a story that makes sense, you can develop what researchers call earned security. You can actually change your pattern. So we'll leave you with this final thought, because the story you tell about your past, it isn't just some dusty old tale. It's an active, living force in your life right now. So the real question you got to ask yourself is, what is the story you're telling? And is it working for you today?